fishermen.
All fishermen.
Yeah.
All right, we've got another episode. So we've got Craig Garland, the Northwest fisherman. Do you want to give a quick intro of who you are, Craig?
Yeah, my name's Craig Garland. I've grown up on the northwest, born and bred in Wynyard. Fished this area all my life. Tried a few different things, small business and what have you. Went walkabout for 5 or 6 years there at one stage. Now I've got 3 kids, a mortgage, and joined the rest of the crew.
And you care a lot about Tasmania, well, pretty much all of Tasmania, but mainly the Northwest.
Oh, all of Tassie.
Yeah.
Yeah, my whole life I've travelled all over the state, you know. When you get a weekend or two, can't wait to get away and go to a place like Conical Rocks or East Coast, Hippolyte, you know, Highlands. We're so spoiled with choices here.
So if you've been all around Tassie, where's your favourite spot?
The most powerful place I've been would be Suicide Bay at Woolnorth.
Yep.
Just takes your breath away. And there's a sensation or a feeling that comes with just standing there and looking around at the sheer rugged, raw, inhospitable sort of nature of the place.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
This whole bit of no one's settled here before, so it's kind of just this is how it's meant to be kind of feeling, or how could you describe that feeling?
Oh, it's just rocks, water, you know, and some unique rocks, formations there, a few caves. I don't know. It's just a sensation you get when you're standing down there, and quite a few people that have gone in there with me have said the same thing.
Do you have a certain spot down there where you go, or you like the whole area?
Yeah, well, there's like a little wading pool that's got its own sand and a big pillar of a rock in front of it. And my sister was there photographing me one day on top of this rock, and the swell was breaking all around me. And I'd say that's probably my favourite little hangout area. We used to go there and ring a few crows and generally just sit, really, in peace. It's, one of those places.
So do you reckon that'll stay like that, or do you reckon it'll get changed up a bit soon?
I can't see anything change in that little bay there other than a tidal wave or something.
Yeah. So say, for example, the last year, was it that you really ramped up your public, I suppose, speaking about everything shit about the country?
Oh, no, I'd say it's back in 2017 after being on an advisory council and a lifetime of watching places being trashed, done over, sold off. I'd had enough. And being involved within the system and dealing with the players, I was gobsmacked at the attitude. Out of frustration, I put my hand up for that election, and it was just sheer frustration. I thought, I felt like there was only a few people that actually cared like I did, and I thought, well, that's a bit stupid. There's got to be more people that care. I got 2,200 votes with 5 signs and a $800 budget. Then the next election, I had a few more bob. I put 12 signs up, I think, and I got 6,600 votes in the by-election, which was 11%. They were calling me the kingmaker in the mainland papers because, my preferences got Justine back in, Justine Kay, and got rid of Brett Whiteley, which was ironic, really, because I tried to meet with Brett on a number of occasions and he wouldn't give me an audience, and then I was the one that...
Karma came back around and...
Well, it does, mate. It does.
So going back to that first election, what was your driving factor? Like, what was there like nah, fuck this, I'm just going to go and do it? Or was there something that happened?
The driving factor was 30 years. They relocated seals from salmon farms, thousands of them. And for 30 years, our small mesh sector raised our concerns and tried to get something done about it, and nothing happened. So basically, Tassal lied to us. They said that they couldn't get new nets, and it was old nets, and the seals were causing the problem, and they had to relocate them up here. I since found out that they didn't want to spend the money on the new nets. At that time, they were rolling out into Oakhampton Bay with a new fish farm, and they were saying, we can't afford to fix these old nets. They weren't being forced to do what they should have been doing, And basically, the tail's wagging the dog in this state when it comes to the salmon industry. And hearing about the salmon farm expansion on the 6:30 news, and when they announced they're coming to the northwest, that was one of their grow-out areas, without consulting one fisherman in the state. And we saw that on the news. I thought, this is disgraceful. They're deceitful, sneaky, conniving, backdoor, dealing bunch of clowns, and that's what they are. They do their deals behind the doors with the donors and the power players, and then we find out about it on the 6:30 news. And it's interesting now they're trying to portray protesters that are sick of watching rainforests being knocked down, burned, and us being locked out. They're calling them militant extremists. They're not the ones torching the place and destroying it and keeping everyone out. They're playing the victim card, And I feel for the forestry workers that it's been let to get to this point. I've got a lot of mates that work in the forestry, and I said to one of them, he's a long-term selective logger from the old days, I said, where did this go wrong? He said, when they politicised the forestry industry, and that was the beginning of the end for our bush. And just coincidentally, I was told within 2 to 3 years, it'll be 2 years now, there will not be a saw log grade tree left in this area outside of reserves. Where I've travelled out the back, this is interesting. When I fell upon hard times, broke my leg, they cut my power off and everybody was into me. I was stuck in a shack at Rocky Cope, and the only employment I could find at the time was driving blokes around that lost their licence through drink driving. And a group of them were pot growers. So I got to see all the bush out the back over a 6-year period. And since that time, everything's been knocked down flat. You can see the road stretching out in front of you for miles. All that moss-ridden, wet forest has been opened up and knocked down. And now they've created a fire hazard there. Like we're lucky this year we've had the rain like we have every second week. But all that's done is build up a lot of fuel.
So they're knocking it all down, obviously, for export.
Wood chips, I guess. There wasn't much saw grade stuff in the mix there, so I guess most of it was going for wood chips.
So what would your solution to that issue be?
Well, we subsidise that industry for $60 to $100 million to lock us out, knock it down, and burn it off. You'd be better off keeping your forest,
letting it grow.
Like we have to take a long-term view. And a mate of mine, he said, we need a 1,000-year plan. And that's what we do. We need to look at what we've done. We've had an incredible impact on our forestry, our catchments, our fisheries in the short space of time that we've been here. And interestingly, all the mainlanders that are moving here for the values associated with Tasmania, they need to stand up, because the very thing which is bringing all those people here, even the tourists, is being degraded every day of the week. In the ocean, you can't see what's being dumped on the bottom from the salmon farm enterprises. Their profit margin's 45%, I think. The reason they want to keep it in the marine environment because they don't have to deal with their effluent and their waste. The Storm Bay expansion, get this, what they want to do down there will put 4 to 5 times more effluent in there than all our sewage systems in this state combined. That's into Storm Bay. And the other thing about Storm Bay, it doesn't flush out like you'd think. It flushes up the Derwent. So all that excess nitrogen and what have you going up the Derwent will create, will deoxygenate the water, and then the danger with that, all those heavy metals that are in that Derwent estuary will be released into the marine environment.
So who's policing all that? Is there anyone policing, or who's meant to police it?
We're supposed to have faith in the EPA. The EPA is a rubber stamp for government, and they aren't. We were trying to get, when I ran for the Senate, we was trying to get a federal oversight to see over what's happening down here, because like I said, the tail's wagging the dog. They've all been seduced by the money. They overstate the jobs involved, and like our small mess fishery, 6 of us here used to catch 20 or 30 tonne. We used to feed the whole community, and within a short space of time, they shut down our fishery. And an interesting fact about that, there was a particular politician that was going to do buggery for us. I just need to get in, I'll do this, that and the other. As soon as he got in, he wouldn't even return our phone calls.
So was that a party member?
Yeah.
So do you think that he was just doing it to get in, or do you think once he was in, he realised being in a party he couldn't do it?
They'll do anything to get into that position because they know once they're in that position, the lurks, the perks, and rubbing shoulders with the power players. You look at some of the federal politicians and their net worth now. One, I think, was a policeman. His net worth now is $300 million. That's not bad for a cop chopping over into the political sphere.
Yeah.
It's a dirty, dirty game. They've sold out all us Australians, and we're not represented anymore. You know, parties don't represent people. They represent their party and their
big corporations.
Yep.
And
so we need independence in the mix. I was glad to hear that Sue has been moved on by the Liberals, and she's so glad to be away. She is a shining light for Tasmanians as an independent. And it just shows you that the party, Sue wanted to represent her constituents, which was she was elected to do, and they didn't want her to do she had to do what the party said. And
so is this documented that's
Yeah,
what
yeah,
happened?
Yep.
And has the party came out and said that's what happened, or?
Well, they just said they voted and they don't want her for the next election, so she's been excommunicated.
Yeah, right.
And to her own benefit, I believe, because as she said, it's toxic. You're looking over your shoulder all the time. And imagine playing on a football side where the whole side didn't like you and they wouldn't kick the ball to you. You think, well, what the hell am I doing out here, you know?
So do you think that brings into scope that parties don't actually have Australia people's best interest at heart?
No, they don't. Apart from the Greens. Like, the Greens have been nagging on for ages and ages, and they haven't contributed in any way to the doing over of the environment, the degrading of catchments and waterways. They've been the exact opposite. And it's really interesting now, a lot of people that are farmers, shooters, are coming up to me and going, I'm not a Greenie, but, you know, so the parties played this wedge game with politics. They bullied the smallest group, the pacifists. You know, they're not violent, they're not extremists, but they're sticking to their guns and they're putting their body on the line for something that they believe in. And they own those forests. You know, we all own those forests. The fact that we're subsidising it with the millions of dollars to be knocked down is just absolutely crazy.
So when they say sustainable forestry, how are they doing that, or are they just not? Is it just a word?
They're not. It's just more spin. It's all spin and rhetoric. The whole show, you know. And you talk to the people with the skin in the game, the foreman on the factory floor of 50 years, the long-term selective logger. They'll tell you straight what the problem is. And the problem is we're not represented anymore. We've been sold out, and we have to take democracy back. It's been hijacked. It has. It's been hijacked. I never used to vote. And then the only time I did, the next year they got rid of the Greens. They reduced the sitting numbers in Tassie here from 35 to 25 because the Greens were gaining ascendancy. That was Labor and Liberal conspiring together to hijack democracy. That's where the democracy was going. That's where and they steamrolled that and stopped it dead. And the end result now is we've got politicians in this state with too many portfolios. They can't do justice to any of them, just so they could retain their power. Now, where was the thought about us and the Tasmanians with all of that? There was none. It was about their survival. So
the survival of the party themselves.
The parties, yeah. The party is first and foremost.
So looking forward, how do we correct that course in the near future?
Well, a funny thing happened to me. A political scientist rang me after one election. I can't remember which one it was. And he said to me, do you realise how powerful you are? And I was feeling quite powerless. I didn't get elected, you know, and you know, I thought everything was futile. But he explained the nature of the beast. Evenly matched Labor and Liberal. Get one independent in, and quite possibly you've got the balance of power. You get two independents in this state, and you would have the balance of power. Now, if you get two good independents, not people that want to stop everything, but able to put in amendments and make sure things are done properly and properly thought out with the community at the table, then we'll start to see some real prosperous outcomes for Tasmanians in general.
So when he said that you're powerful, how did he did he guide you on what to do next, or
No, he said if we went back to the 35 sitting members, I'd get a seat at the table on what I did back then. But now I believe the polarisation of long-term Liberal voters, long-term Labor voters, how relevant is Labor? What have they contributed over the journey of the last 3 years? Not much, you know. So yeah, I think there's a big opportunity, and particularly for Braddon, we're the biggest swingers in the nation, because our bullshit radar is a bit more finely tuned than other places in the world, and we get sick of one lot and we throw the others in. It's been Labor, Liberal, Labor, Liberal, Labor, Liberal. Well, hopefully we can get some good alternatives and send a loud message, because the same problems here are right across Australia. The same things are happening all across. Look what happened in Western Australia. I don't think did they get a Liberal seat over there?
Yeah.
Labor got just steamrolled them. You know, they sellouts.
So do you think that the issue is the parties themselves or the politicians themselves, or a bit of both?
The big issue, all of these problems we're having are symptoms of a bigger problem, and that is lack of community input into the decision-making process. You need the community at the table. In the old days, the reason we had 30-odd sitting members in this state, there was 30 municipalities in the state. And in the old days, they met in the hall, they raised their issues, and then they elected someone from that mix to go forth and represent them. Now, if you look at Braddon, all the population is Devonport-Ulverston way, and that's where all our politicians come from. The poor old West Coast never get a voice. I believe we have to tweak this system. I believe the best way of representing each and every area is through your local municipality. You should elect your member from your municipality. That'll solve a few things. It'll get rid of this charlatan and built-up image sort of thing, which deceives people into voting for them. You go to any local municipality, they know who's for the community and who is genuine. So you would erode that party influence and get a bit of diversity at the table down in Hobart. I heard John Howard, I don't like the man, what he did. He sold us out. But he did say one interesting thing here last year or the year before, and that Ben Chifley's parliament was recognised as one of the best we've ever had in this country. I think Ben Chifley was a loco driver. I think there was a butcher in the mix and maybe a shoe repairer or something. You know, you don't have to be Einstein to be a good politician. What you need to be is resourceful and seek out those with the knowledge. The party's not interested in that. They don't want to know skin in the game, because it's at odds with their money-making enterprises and the deals that are being done. So get the community at the table, get the diversity back into Parliament, and we'll go somewhere for a brighter future. You know?
So where you're sitting at the moment, you think that the parties themselves are pushing their own agendas instead of the agendas of their congregation, kind of thing?
My word. Yeah, my word.
So how would we fix that? Like, would it be as simple as getting you into, say, the Labor Party? Do you reckon that would fix it? Or do you reckon the party itself is corrupt?
Parties are the problem. There's no mention of parties in the Constitution, you know. So
so you think everyone should be an independent?
You should have that freedom. You should have, and within a party, like the structure of the parties now, there's an upper echelon that makes all the decisions, and then all the stooges have to follow out, you know, obey orders. There's not much freedom there for you to represent your constituents if it's at odds with the party take, which is what happened to Sue. So, you know, we need freedom to represent and not be stifled or steamrolled by a party directive. It's really easy. Any politics representing this place, it's two things. Is it in the best interest of Tasmania? And is it in the best interest of Tasmanians? And that's what you have to ask yourself. And, you know, you look at this UPC project for Robbins Island. That will impact Aboriginal heritage values. Robbins Island was the meeting place of the 8 tribes of the Northwest. That's where they converged every full moon in October. And they conducted their intermarriage ceremonies. I believe they stayed there for 5 or 6 weeks. They're about to put the biggest wind farm in the Southern Hemisphere on there, and they haven't even determined the meeting place and the village site. They've done sticks and stones archaeology. It's the largest migratory shorebird habitat in this state by double with the number of birds. I think there's 9 other places. They're all protected. This one isn't. You have to ask yourself why there, and there's quite a story behind that. It will impact farmers. They went up to an 80-year-old farmer, this is UPC, and told him they wanted to buy the land. He didn't want to sell, and then they come back to him and told him we can compulsorily acquire this land. You know, this is a foreign-owned company that's been given avenues to go round and tell people we can take your land off you whether you like it or not. Now, that 80-year-old, I don't know if he ever fought in a world war or not, but the very thing he fought for is happening now.
So is that a bluff or is that true power?
No, they can do that. They can do that.
So who's giving them that authority?
Well, the Minister of the Day, Guy Barnett, I guess. It's his ball, this
So
one.
what's their spin? Is it because it's for the better of the community, or how
Jobs and growth. Now, you know where they got the jobs and growth slogan from? Have a look at back in America. That's where that come from. Jobs and growth. It's another spin, marketing exercise. Everybody's for jobs.
So in your personal opinion though, like, how's it gonna do jobs? Because I feel like as soon as the wind farms put together, that's it. They are pretty much they run themselves.
I paid some money to some energy consultants. I said, I want in your plain words, what's in it for us with this? And in a nutshell, he said to me, all benefits from this UPC project flow north. We Tasmanians take all the risk if it falls over or if there's advancement in technology and it's no longer relevant. Apart from the Smithton Tuck Shop, this is his words, apart from the Smithton Tuck Shop and tall timbers for accommodation, there'll be very little in it for the community, and I think we might get 1 apprentice a year. Michael Anderson from the CEPU, he came to speak at one of their forums, and you know, there's nothing. They're using visa workers there, fly in, fly out. Apart from the construction stage, there's nothing in it for us whatsoever. And there's a good alternative which has been stonewalled by the government, and that is West Coast Renewables Whaleback Ridge proposal. That is Australian-owned, Australian superannuation funds to build it. 3,000 construction jobs. Where the Labor Party is on that, they know all about this. Why aren't they pressuring the Liberals? Why isn't this being approved? You know, it's using existing infrastructure and easements in the Reese Dam and easement to Tulla. What else is... You know, it ticks all the boxes. No raptors. There's certainly no migratory shorebirds there. There's not 25,000 of them to be chopped to pieces.
So looking at the wind farm, what's your biggest no-no? Like, what's your main concern?
In the right place. And it's the same with salmon farms. In the right place. You know, Robbins Island is the wrong place.
So why do you think they've chose Robbins Island?
Well, there's wind there. You know, the logistics, the causeway and bridge or whatever they have to put across the channel there will silt the channel up and stop that flushing. Birds will be hitting that. I don't know. They must have paid a bit of money behind the scenes. Maybe it's tied in with Marinus, which is another scam. There's nothing in it in it for us Tasmanians with that one. You know.
So your personal opinion, where do you think would be a better location?
Oh, Whaleback Ridge. West Coast Renewables project ticks all the boxes. They've even offered cheap power to salmon farms to get their dirty operations out of our inshore breeding areas and get them on land. 3,000 construction jobs. That'll come from around here. They've got to focus on using existing businesses around here to source their product.
So is that even getting looked at?
They're waiting now. I believe it's the final tick-off is on the Crown land. Now, that's what they've been stuffing them around with for over a year now, Roger Jensch and his crew. And I believe in Western Australia, just recently, they announced one of the biggest farms in the Southern Hemisphere, and that's all on Crown land. I believe Whaleback Ridge proposal is a mirror for everything that's wrong with UPC's Robbins Island project, you know.
So you think whatever they are doing wrong, Whale Ridge does right?
It's the right location. It's the right location. Like I said, you've got the Reese Power Station there. You don't have to have transmission lines going through the Loongarner area, through the Leven Canyon area there. You're not knocking down forests. They have to create 100-odd metre pathway through our forest reserves.
So does it cost them more money to get the power where it needs to go if they put it there?
Costs more money to get the power to...
Yeah, so where are they...
This is all for the benefit of the mainland, you know. And they've said, oh, this will encourage industry to come in. They'll be able to buy the power cheaper on the mainland if that goes ahead, and they will here in Tassie. So why the hell is any industry going to come here when they're getting cheaper power over there, you know? It's right location, and it's poorly thought out, Robbins. It's... I believe it's a dream of the owners of that island. They've had it for 18, 20 years. When they tried to protect that area with the migratory shorebirds 20 years ago, John Hammond from Robbins Island was one of the main players and part of forming a group, Communities Against Ramsar listing, and they fought that. They fought against that area being protected for... A lot of those birds are critically endangered.
So that island's privately owned?
Yes, it is, yeah. Yep.
So have they sold, or are they going to lease it, or how does that work?
No, I don't know. I guess they just lease the sites for the wind farm towers, and I believe that's quite lucrative for them.
So surely, if they do it on Crown land, the government can lease it to them and actually make money off it.
Well, you look at Whaleback Ridge. There's no communities. There's no forests. There's no birds to impact. It just ticks all the boxes. Robbins, foreign-owned, Hong Kong headquarters, all benefits flow north. Like I said before, it will impact the birds, it will impact our fisheries, it will impact our forestries, it will impact heritage values of the Aboriginal sites. You know, for what? We'll get one apprentice a year. You know, that's crazy. And you've got down there, West Coast Renewables Project, you know, in an area like the West Coast that sadly needs employment. Well, that will supply enough employment for anyone on the West Coast, all the circular head boys, and quite a few on the northwest coast here.
You'll probably get people even moving down there for it and build up their economy.
Well, West Coast is the gem, in my view, of Tasmania. The mountains, the raw nature, the rugged nature of it, the forests, the dams, it's just an absolute gem of a place. And it's been sadly done over, ignored.
So how far is Robbins Island away from going ahead?
I believe the development application comes out soon. So,
and so do they need any community input or anything to get that passed, or what do you think the effect that you guys can have on it?
Oh, we'll be trying to stop it with all of our soul. That is so wrong. It is so wrong.
And personally, like, as you sit, do you think that's something that you can accomplish?
Well, it's a bit like running out on the footy field. You know, what you're up against is the government, the proponents, and quite a bit of money. But we live in a democracy, and social licence is a word that's been thrown around quite a bit. That project there has no social licence whatsoever.
And by social licence, what do you mean by that?
The best wishes of the community.
Yep.
They don't have that. And an interesting thing's just happened recently. We've been spending quite a bit of money on signs, and a fella's been seen knocking them off.
Yeah, I've seen that.
Yeah. The sign that was at Robbins Island, at the Robbins boat ramp, mentioning all the migratory birds and everything, that was stolen quite a while ago, a couple of years ago.
So have people known the person that's stealing it, or?
Oh, they've recognised him, yeah. And, you know, he's turned into a common thief. So
would he have vested interest in it to go ahead?
I reckon.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, why else would you run around stealing signs? You know, the newspapers, the Advocate's a disgrace. You know, Michael Anderson, CEPU, why they haven't put in what he said about that. Eric Vola, you know, our esteemed bird scientist. You know, UPC's going, it's all about the science, but then they're completely disregarding Eric Vola's comments that it's wrong location, you know.
So who's reporting on this?
Who?
Yeah, is there anyone actually reporting on all this, or is it just like you guys battling it out?
Well, you get a little bit in the paper, but a lot of letters have been sent in. Quite a few people have said to me they've sent letter after letter, and none of them have seen the light of day.
So is this to the Advocate?
Yeah. You know, so I suggested putting the signs up. I realised something when I had my fish shop. I had a big chalkboard out the front. It was about 2 metres wide by about 1.5 metres high. And I picked up the Advocate one day, and on the front page it said, "Advocate poll shows Liberals on top in Bratton." That was back in '94, I think it was. I thought, God, who did this poll? The Harris family at the dinner table? They owned the Advocate at the time. And I wrote on my chalkboard, "Advocate poll, Liberal crock of shit." And I went fishing for the day. I come back, and my staff were gobsmacked. They abused by 10 or 12 people. Then the phone rang. It was the local council. They asked me to wipe off what I had on my board. And I said, no, I'm not breaking any law. And then a few minutes later, the local sergeant rang me from the police station. He said, "You've got to wipe off what's on your board, Craig." And I said, "Why? I'm not breaking any law. I'll change the shit to crap if it's offending anybody." And he said, "Well, if you don't wipe it off, I'll book you for obstructing the footpath." And I said, "Well, you come and book me and you book everyone else in the street with their sign." And I've got that infringement notice at home. So I realised the power of the word just on a board on the side of a road. So these ladies down there that have formed the Circular Head Coastal Awareness Network, they were stressed to the eyeballs. Some of them are third, fourth generation of that area. And what they plan to do, they will change it forever. And they were just distraught and felt like nobody cared. They had no outlet. So we printed signs, and we've got a heap more coming now. After the ones we had got stolen, we're putting more up.
So what do you think that they're achieving by stealing signs?
They don't want people to know that it's the largest migratory shorebird habitat in the state. They don't want people to know that the King George whiting, the flounder, the garfish, the blue spot flathead and all those other invertebrates and shellfish that feed those migratory shorebirds there, they don't want them to know how crucial
So
it
is anyone covering any of that?
In bits and pieces, but not in depth. If you go to the Circular Head Coastal Awareness Network Facebook page, and I'd encourage everybody to do that has got a keen interest in this place and where we're going. Eric Voller, the bird scientist, he speaks on that. Everything he says is damning against that project. Michael Anderson on the energy side, jobs and everything involved with it, he covers all that. I got to do a little bit at the end of it because Eric was on hookup waiting to answer questions, so I just covered a little bit on the fishery side of things. But I'll be doing quite a few Facebook videos over the next month or two.
What about like the Chronicle down in Smithton or anything? Have they covered any of it?
They are now. They're starting to put, I believe in tomorrow's Chronicle, there's a letter from Michael Anderson from the CEPU, the Communications Electrical Plumbers Union. Eric Voller has written a letter as well. We're getting a bit of an awareness out, but it's taken us, a Taswater's wife, an unemployed lady, and a few other volunteers, a lot of time and effort to make sure that the community is being informed about that. We've got 150 people to that forum. We had it at Smithton on a Thursday night. It was wet and windy at 6 o'clock. That was huge. You know, when they had a forum on the ice epidemic that they were having down there, they got 40-odd people, and they thought that was a success. Well, we got 3 times that, and we had heaps of apologies. So we're getting the information out. I think there's 10 groups now actively involved in fighting against this project along the coast. So
in your opinion, do you think that awareness will be able to get it moved, or you just hope that it would be able to get it moved?
Oh, look, I'm not too worried about the end result, but we've just got to do everything we can to make people aware of what is happening there, and hopefully build a groundswell of support. You know, I'll be putting my hand up in the next state election, which I believe will be announced tomorrow. That's the whisper. We'll see if that one's true or not. You know, salmon farms, wind farms, they're all foreign. They're all profit-making ventures with very little in it for the community and a great cost to our environment.
So if you get in, do you think you might be able to stop it, or at least make more people aware?
Well, I think if I get up, and anybody else that puts a hand up, you know, as an independent on the very same issues we have, you know, you got to remember robins and salmon farms and our park sell-off and Lake Malbina are all symptoms of a bigger problem, and that is the sell-out nature of what we have here, this mandate they take when they get 30-odd% of the vote. You know, we've evolved into an elective dictatorship. And I posted a video of Will Hodgman when he was doing his sales pitch for China a couple of years ago. Have a listen to that. Go on my Facebook and have a listen to what he was doing there. He was selling everything, giving the sales pitch, and here we are. Morrison did the same for 15 years. He had his private register of, the Port of Darwin. What other country in the world has sold a port off to a foreign country? Like, that's just outrageous. That's almost treasonous, What the biggest thing is, do people in Australia feel this way? Do the bulk of the majority of Australians, are they outraged that our country's been sold off?
Do you reckon they're unaware?
I reckon most of them are.
Because some of this stuff that you tell me, so like I'm not real big on politics. I don't really follow politics and that. But a lot of the stuff you're saying now, like I was unaware of, and I don't even know how I would be made aware of that. Like, are they putting that out somewhere, or is it all done behind closed doors?
Oh, most of these deals, we heard about the salmon farm expansion on the 6:30 news. Not one fisherman in the state. I'm on an advisory council. I go to all the meetings. Not one fisherman in this state had a hand in that.
So is that once it was done, you heard about it, or once it was approved?
Once they approve the growth plan, they still have to be issued a permit before they can put the pens in the water. But, you take that northwest tip. That is the most crucial, sensitive fish breeding, feeding area in this state. The amount of species that come there to reproduce in those seagrass beds and in the wider marine environment is just astronomical.
So do you think there's just going to be too much of it? Like, what would the solution be for them to cut back?
Well, salmon farms have to, here in Tasmania, all our inshore waters, we're a little rock in the middle of the water. All our inshore areas are fish breeding propagation areas, and they've done very little studies on the effect, none I don't believe, on the effect on fish larval movement from these salmon farms. Most pelagic fish larvae have to inflate a little air sac when they pop out of the egg, so they have to come to the surface to do that. If there's a barrier in any way, shape or form, they die. And if you look at the northwest coast, we're the most heavily polluted coastline in Australia. The APPM mill, they now know that effluent, they called it the black liquor. Every night they open the valves up and it's all the tannin and all the nasties through the bleaching process that was released into the harbour and went out to sea. It was killing fish larvae. The cooter fishery that was huge off Wynyard, over 8 years, 6 or 7, 8 years, they fished down the year classes because all the larvae was getting killed, and they fished the year classes down and it collapsed. The King George whiting that are in the northwest with the distinct genetics to this area, they breed in the northwest. That larvae floats eastward, coming into contact with the pulp mill, dead. Since that pulp mill's gone, since dioxide's gone, since the acid plant's gone, our fish life here, I've never seen the amount of fish in my lifetime that we have here. You see schools of fish everywhere. When I set my small mesh, I'm getting 20 to 30 different species in the net. It's just amazing what's happened.
So what would the solution be? Because obviously you can't shut everything down.
No, you do it properly.
Would it be to police it more, or how do you mean by do it properly?
Well, everything's really simple. If you take a simple approach to everything, it's usually the best way. And it all comes down to good or bad practice. We don't have to reinvent the wheel now. We know what's bad. We know what's detrimental. So we don't do it. We look for an alternative. And, with getting salmon farms on land, that cheap power offered to Batuna, they should take that. They should get out of our marine environment, set themselves apart from the other two players in the salmon industry, and I'll buy shares in that company.
So what would that entail? Like big breeding tanks on land, or
a reticulated or recirculated closed loop setup. They're doing it around the world.
So how much would that cost them to get done?
Well, this is the thing. I met with a couple of salmon farms representatives, and they said, if we go on land, we'd go closer to our market, which is Melbourne, Sydney. So they'd probably go to Cootamundra, but they'd have a hard time marketing Cootamundra Atlantic salmon. They need Tasmania, and to a degree, we need the jobs that are provided for them. But
so do you reckon that's them bluffing, trying to make the government scared of enforcing that? Because they're like, hey, if you make us do that, we're going.
Well, they said the single biggest deterrent from going on land is the excess power they have to use for the pumps of the water and everything. Well, now they've just recently been offered cheap power, so they can't throw that one at us anymore. And And if they go out of our marine environment to somewhere else, this is the thing. These salmon farms have been given sole licence for these areas. There hasn't been a public tender process. And I talked to a fella that did the salmon farm enterprise well before he sold out. He said we could put 6 or 8 individuals, give them their own pen, let them share in the profits and do it properly. We don't need big corporations, big companies. This can be done by small players if the government's willing to come on board and back them. So,
So where's all that salmon going to?
Melbourne, Sydney. There's very little being exported. I had a lady come up to me, a scientist actually, and she said she realised she's found out the mercury content. They're telling people to eat this salmon every day of the week, but she said the mercury content in there, I wouldn't be advising people to do that. I'll be getting that email shortly. I want to have a good look at that. It's a dirty product. The food, the antibiotics, the oil. I got another email the other day that was suggesting that the reason they've got all the algal growth down in the channel, down D'Entrecasteaux and up the Tasman Peninsula is because in the last 2 years they've been substituting the wild fish oil component with palm oil. Now, I don't know if that's true or not, but he found references with the salmon feed companies with the palm oil and what have you. And if they've been using that in the last 2 years, which coincides with this algal growth, which we've never had, like we've had, well, it's not natural. And it's not a healthy choice. They're killing the marine environment, killing wild fisheries, and trying to tell us to eat this product, which is, I wouldn't touch it with a barge pole, mate. And none of the people I know work on salmon farms eat it. It's a dirty product, and it shouldn't be going near it.
So you said you've got these emails that come into you, and since you've stepped up and gone out there, have you just become like a beacon of all this information? Like, was it bad, and then you've stepped up and you thought, "Fuck, this is really bad," or how did that come about?
Everybody thinks you got shit on liver, so if they get a bit of shit on the liver, it comes my way. That's okay. That's what I put my hand up for. I'm not getting paid for any of what I'm doing. I carted a fella around the other day and took him to a lawyer and made sure he was okay because of what was happening in his workplace. So, yeah, people do come out of the blue, and it's been quite challenging, really. I'm a marginal income fisherman. I don't have huge amounts of money, or I do have time. So, that's something I'm rich in. But
you've started to get a bit of reach as well now, like on your social media and that.
Yeah. There's a lot of people that feel the way I do, and I've got a recognisable head. So wherever I go in the state, people are coming up to me going, "Good on you." And just recently, a lot of younger people are saying, "Good on you, mate." Nobody's putting things across from our perspective, and you're doing that.
Well, in theory, if you can get the younger people on board, hopefully all this bad misconduct and that just dies out.
Yeah, well, I was never interested in politics. If you'd have told me 4 years ago that I'd do 3 elections, I would have laughed at you, and I would have bet you $1,000 that would never happen.
So did you think that the politicians at the time had things handled and that's why you wasn't interested in it, or you just wanted to do your own thing?
No, I was dealing with others. We've all got different things to deal with in life, and my focus was one of self-discovery, I guess. Who am I? What is it that I'm meant to be doing? What is it that pushes my buttons? Up until that point, all I did was work 7 days a week, stack my acorns in a bank account, thought I needed a bigger car, a better stereo. It was only when I broke my leg and had the power cut off. And
so how'd you break your leg?
I was playing footy for Smithton. This is a real funny story. The Smithton coach, Michael Gurry, I was at Tassie's Tavern having a beer one night, and he thought I was Colin Loring. Now, Colin Loring is quite a talented footballer. He'd love to hear this too, because he thinks he's a bit better than what he is. But he was a very good footballer, and the coach thought I was Colin Loring, and he said, "Carl, we've got a lot of young blokes down here at Smithton. Could you come down and give us a hand?" And I said, "My name's not Carl, but I'll come and give you a hand." I was at the end of my career. I'd battled a lot of injuries.
Yeah.
Anyway, I thought I could do another season, but I broke my leg at the Deloraine Oval. I was left to make my own way to the hospital. I actually cracked the top of the tibia in half, and went to the hospital. I got a wrong diagnosis from a doctor. He said, "Oh, you've just strained your ligaments. Go home, put ice on it." So I spent the next week at home hobbling around. I told him I broke it. You know, I heard it crack, and I've had broken bones. Anyway, then I got a phone call a week later, and orthopedic surgeon said, you better come in. And I went into surgery. I didn't know what was happening. I come out with a plate and 6 screws on the bottom of my leg, and went back to live in my powerless shack with the toaster that didn't work anymore, the TV that didn't turn on, and I thought the world had come to an end. I was in a very dark place.
So how old was you then?
I think I would have been about 30, 34, I think.
Yep. Yeah. So was you fishing at the time?
I actually had the shop that I started that you put your pizza parlour in.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I started that shop there, and then I sold it. I had 5 years in that. I won a small business award, which was a ABC Radio Best Fish and Chips award, and in a week my turnover tripled. The demand on my staff, me, so suddenly this cruisy little operation I had where I could go catch my fish, clean it, take my time, and it became a bit hard. The work didn't worry me, the long hours didn't worry me, but trying to deal with staff and other people, I've been a bit of a loner my whole life. I found that very challenging. And then all the conditions you have to do, you know, the paperwork, the superannuation, the wages, and, you know, I just couldn't.
They've made that a bit easier now. With online, so the system I had 2 shops at one stage and I had 18 employees. It used to take me 4 minutes to do our payroll. So all the systems now integrate with like the Australian award and that, and they can clock in and clock out on their phone and all that, and then you just go yep, and then done. It pays super tax and all that all in one.
Yeah.
So when you broke your leg, did you have the shop then?
No, I'd left.
Yep.
My plan was I swapped my shop for a beachfront property in Rocky Cape. Everyone told me I got ripped off.
What, you like clean swapped it, or you sold your shop and brought the property?
No, I swapped the shop. I think it was a small settlement which settled my loan.
Yeah, right.
So I ended up. I thought I was the richest man on the planet. I was living on a beach. All I ever wanted to do. I saw a movie once. It was called When the Whales Came, and it was about this fellow who lived on. I think it might have been a Shetland island or something. And he had his little garden, his rowboat, couple of kids. Actually named my daughter Grace after the girl in the movie.
Did you get yourself a rowboat?
Yeah, I've had a few. The Purdens, I'll back the Purden in any day. Great little rowboat. But yeah, all I wanted to do was have some kids, find someone that loved me, and spend my time fishing. And that's all I want to do now. But as you grow older, the big concern for me, the world today, where we've gone in my lifetime in this area, if we're not careful, things that we've taken for granted and accepted as every day will be gone and gone forever. You know, I listened to the 3 scientists the other day talking on the radio about river aquatic life. Our river systems here, which when I was a kid, mate, the trout fishing, the native species that were in there to what there is now is a very sad. You know, there's good pockets here and there, don't get me wrong. You know, we've got plenty to work with to get it back to how it should be. But if we don't act, things will be gone forever. And then you get that domino effect. Everything is interreliant in nature. I've seen that in the ocean. You take one thing out and that has a dramatic effect right through.
So you've pretty much been in the ocean your whole life, haven't you?
Yeah.
Like you were in the Navy for a bit as well, wasn't you?
Yeah, I had a discipline problem at high school, and my headmaster, Gerald Cross was his name. He was a great man. He got the parents in one day and he said, this boy needs a bit of discipline. He can be anything he wants to be, but he needs a bit of direction. So I joined up, and I was a junior recruit. They don't take junior recruits anymore. But
So did you pick the Navy?
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
Did you have options?
Like,
were they like Army, Navy,
I
jail?
Yeah, well, the first 3 months was like being in a jail. We weren't allowed off the base. Yeah. I was 15 when I left. I was in King's Cross when I was 16, and coming from the northwest coast and then immersing myself in the city was just like, it was like a movie. I'll never forget it. But yeah, I needed the discipline. I needed to get on with people I didn't necessarily like or agree with, and that's what you do. You've just got to find common ground or agree to disagree. That was one big lesson I learned. I had a few blues there. They love sticking it into Tasmanians, the old two-head joke and all that, and that wore a bit thin with me a couple of times, and I snapped. But apart from that, the one thing I missed, I did 15 months away, and I couldn't wait to get home. I was driving across rivers that had no water. I was in a city full of people and knew no one. It was the most impersonal experience, loneliest place I've ever been in my life.
So you came back, what, you was just about turned 17?
Yeah, I think it was 16, 17, 17, 15 months. Yeah, it would have been just 17.
Do you think it worked?
Oh, look, I disappointed a few people that wanted to see me stay there, and but for me personally, I had to do what was right for me. I've always been strong-minded, and that's why I was sent to the Navy in the first place. But I miss this place.
Would you live anywhere else in the world?
No.
What about if all these big corporations fuck it?
Well, I'll go down trying to stop them.
Yeah.
I got the SEAL relocation stopped, and what was that? That was a mental health issue. I chased the relocator that was bringing him up here 60k down the highway and pulled him up at the traffic lights. At the time, I thought I could negotiate with him and his mates to, just go away for 2 weeks and let these salmon farms, deal with the problem. But it didn't go down real well at the lights and nearly got violent. Then I rang my industry rep and told him what had happened and asked the question, what do we have to do to get some action on this issue?
And what did you have to do?
I got a bit of help from I better not say, but another fisherman also rang up my industry rep and said he recognised the symptoms that I was displaying, the post-traumatic stress. He said he didn't want to lose me like he had 2 other mates. And he said, I did my bit that day. And he's an ex-serviceman, this fella, and he said, tomorrow is my turn. That certainly got the attention.
Yeah, right.
So this is what ordinary citizens are being pushed to do to get some simple outcomes. Corporations and big money here has taken precedent over community's best interest and community, and that's my fight. We own this place. We've been here for generations, and I'll be buggered if I'm going to sit back and let these pricks come in and do what they want and destroy what I hold dear. And fortunately for me, I found during the election time, like I said, I'm pretty much a loner. I don't spend much time with a lot of people. So I wasn't real sure how people felt. But I got a lot of support, and I've continued to do so. And I believe the polarisation of just about everybody I know against these major parties and what they represent or don't represent, hopefully we'll see a good independent get in with soon. I'm not saying I'm the best, but I'm the only one around here. Well, one of a few actually. There's some others that stood with me, but
so the local party that I seen you guys just start up.
Yep.
How did that come about?
Well,
was that your idea?
No. Leanne Minsell, she's worked with the Australia Institute. She's been in Canberra for 20 years. She knows the game backwards, knows where the problems are, what needs to be done. Anna Bateman, I met her on a beach. She heard me talking on a radio a few years back, and she was ringing the Rocky Cape Tavern and going, I'm after Craig, going, I don't know him. Everybody fobbed her off. They thought they must have thought someone was from a debt agency was trying to get hold of me or something. But I turned up on a beach at Orford, and she was there, and then she donated a time to do my Facebook videos and helped me with the social media. I wasn't on Facebook. I had no intentions of ever doing that. Technically, this sort of thing like we're doing, I had no idea about. So she gave me a lot of help, a lot of time. Then she got a job with Jackie Lambie. She was Jackie's staffer for, I think it was 15, 18 months. So both those ladies have had a bit of an insight into the mechanics of politics. Their hearts are in the right place. We definitely need more diversity in Parliament. And so they suggested and started that up. It was also pointed out to me when I was running for the Senate. This is something I find really interesting. there's no mentions of parties in our constitution, but to get your name above the line on the Senate ticket, you have to have a party. If you don't, you get an empty box with nothing and grouped underneath. That's why I teamed up with Mr. Flathead. So we became a group. We got a box above the line but no name to it. So to me, if there's no mentions of parties in the Constitution, why the hell do I have to form a party to get my name above the line and be on a level footing with everybody else?
Have you asked the question?
No, well, I've got a 1.5 and a 5.5 and a 7.5-year-old, and the last 2 or 3 years, even tonight, Jack was screaming. Arthur wouldn't eat his food. Gracie said there was too much fat on the meat. You know, the whole house was just you know, you're just reactive when you got kids, and so yeah. So I forgot what the question was.
Just have you asked the question why you're below the line?
No. I what I was getting to, I just haven't had time.
Yeah, right.
I haven't had time. I was just trying to. It's funny. I'm a full-time fisherman, and at the moment, I fish when I can find time. With the political side of things and people, one bloke I spent 2 days with. So, yeah, time management.
So, how old did you say your kids were?
1.5, 5.5, and 7.5.
So still pretty hectic at home as well.
Oh yeah. No, I've got a great partner, Beck. She's, you know,
So how do you fit all that in?
Well, you just do the best you can, and keep going.
So if you get in, you obviously get paid.
Yeah.
Would you stop fishing, or you'd want to keep fishing?
I'm not too sure. I don't imagine I would have much time for fishing.
Yeah.
You know, like, this is something I thought at length about. Once again, I'm going away, but you know, I'd have to get in and worry about that then.
Yeah.
But you know, it's something I've given a lot of thought. But you know, I've got a lot of fishing buddies. If I get in as a politician, I'm sure
you can still get out and go fishing.
Yeah, I might get a free trip out, but you're not allowed to do that, are you?
I don't know. Probably not.
Well, you're selling your ass like the rest of them, are you? You know, you're beholden.
Yeah.
You have to be so careful, people giving you stuff and offering stuff. You know, you've got to keep yourself. One of my good mates, he's dead now, but he was big on that. Done deal's a done deal. He never booked anything up. He never left anything outstanding. And he always used to say it's a good day to die, and that's because he had nothing unresolved or no issues. And that's where I'm trying. Well, I'm pretty much at that place. You know, I've done everything I've wanted in life. I've got a lady that loves me. I've got 3 beautiful kids. I live in one of the most beautiful places in the world.
You got your house on the beach?
I've got a property at Montague, which is on the banks
now.
of the channel there. That's I'm about to do something with that, so we can bring people in to share that and rent it out. It's an amazing spot.
Yep.
So
what was you going to do? Just like an Airbnb kind of thing?
Yeah, B&B, and also offer them. They can come out. I'll take them out fishing if they want to go fishing. I'll prepare their food.
Like have a whole experience kind of thing.
Yeah. And my business partner, when we set up the fruit and veg fish shop in Wynyard, his son is going to get involved. His talents will take care of one side, and all I'll have to do is just be myself.
Yep.
Take them fishing or give them some fish or talk to them, whatever.
So going in back to the election, if you got in, would you try and still be yourself, or will they try and cage you a bit and put you in a box?
Oh, I don't know. I hope they respect. If I did happen to get there, I'd hope they'd respect that I was elected by the community and afford some respect to me when.
Like, do they have rules and regulations, what you can and can't say, and how you have to word things and all that, or is it pretty much if you
politics,
get in? Yeah.
I think if you keep it raw and honest, can't go wrong. You might cause a bit of grief for yourself here and there, but honesty is the best approach. And I'll make it quite clear, I'm not after a political career. You know,
You just want shit changed.
I want to make sure things are done right. And it's the same old story. If you want things done right, do it yourself. I've lobbied these politicians. I've met with the people involved for the last 9 or 10 years, and they're not doing what needs to be done. In a lot of cases, they're not allowed to do what needs to be done.
Is that due to party affiliation?
Oh, it's due to engineering. You look at our Marine Resources Department, that used to be 2 floors in the Marine Board building. They're down in the pokey little office at the bottom now. They've underfunded and under-resourced them for the last 8 years and then handing out $2.5 million to some salmon feed company, you know. They're getting more salmon feed companies than the budget for all our wild fisheries. I want to get a focus on that, and if I can get some funding and some extra help in there, that'll go a long way. But my biggest objective is to get the community at the table. We need our own advisory bodies. You know, it's ridiculous. I was the only fella from the whole North Coast sitting on an advisory body down there trying to think of everyone in the community, the environment, and I was up against departments, other fishermen, ministers, but I stuck at it. I've got fishermen, you know, we've got a new director now. I've got a lot of faith in him. He's a northwest coaster. He's from Latrobe. So, you know, it's a slow process to resolve things. Nothing happens overnight, but if you have the community at the table, you'll get to that place a lot quicker. If I had the fishing community that I know and trust in this area for my whole life, some of them don't like me, but I'd still have them on the advisory body because of their skill, their expertise and their knowledge. If I had all of them sitting with me at the table, we would have been years ahead from where we are now. We would be resolving things in a year.
So how do you get that to happen?
Well, I'll make it an election issue. I believe we should have our own advisory body. It's just common sense to discuss what happens in our waters and where we want it to go. That's democracy. One of my mates said to me, "Oh, Craig, that's quite radical. That's called working democracy." You know, so we're not reinventing the wheel. We're just going back to what did work. And it worked when communities got together, raised their issues and discussed things.
So you just think the way that things are going at the moment, it's a bit misguided and we just need to clean the slate, start again.
Yep. Yeah, you go back to what works, you know, and it worked. You meet in your communities and the municipalities. You look at the cost savings if you were electing your representative from that municipality. You put him in the local council chambers. The staff, the machinery, everything is there. There's no need for a mayor. He's just a bloody rubber stamp or whatever, you know, cutting ribbons. There's no need for a mayor. So your political representative could assume those duties and you make them accessible to the community because they get in here and then you don't see them until 3 years later, like we have in the last 3 months where they started their Facebooks and, you know, because there's an election coming. So
it's funny to see as well with the Facebooks because as soon as the election's over, they kind of go quiet.
Yep.
And they go from posting 3 times a day to probably 3 times a month.
Yeah. You know, it's a sales pitch, you know, and people do not be hoodwinked by their false promises, their bags of cash. You look at the by-election, Turnbull and all those Liberals from the main, they were flying into Burnie every day. I think I hate to think what they spent on those flights because this seat here in the by-election was crucial. So they just kept coming. They attacked me. They dragged up something out of my past which wasn't true and tried to smear me, but that worked in reverse. I'll never forget that. I was sitting with an Australian journalist and he wanted to interview me about, you know, who I am, what I'm doing. And then halfway through a sentence and he said, what about your assault conviction in Geelong? And he smiled. And I thought, who's been feeding you information? And like I always do, I just told him the whole story. And the smile went off his face.
So what, you reckon he got told to bring that up?
Oh, fuck yeah. Yeah, that was the setup.
So was there like...
Murdoch Press.
Was there some truth to it and they've just changed the story?
Oh, yeah. I was charged with assault against a female police lady in Melbourne, but I never hit her. She fell down and broke her wrist after she was dragging me dreadlocks out of my head.
But they've changed the story.
Yeah, well, I got hit with heaps of charges there. I got 9 or 10 charges.
Yeah.
And, you know, and that was really hard. I'd never been in trouble with the law before in my life.
Did you feel real good about yourself that they had to go in the dirt and fight you that way?
I knew I had them. I played a lot of footy in my time, and when someone come out and tried to whack me in the back of the head, I knew that I was doing a good job. So I knew straight up. I did smile, actually. I thought, you know,
thanks.
Worried about this.
It's more of like a compliment, isn't it?
It was, yeah. And you know, Matt Denham, he was a journo at the time. You know, I like him. You know, he gave me. One thing that was really interesting, it came to me not long after when Malcolm Turnbull bought into it, violence against women, insinuating, and the whole Liberal Party did. They tried to paint me as some woman bashing cop basher, and that was so far from the truth. But it backfired on them. It's and Turnbull bought into it, and Matt come to me and asked me my comments, and I said, fair dinkum. What's he doing every time he sends our troops off to Afghanistan or Iraq? The biggest casualties in war are women and children. I said, don't talk to me about violence against women. And then I had a crack at the Prime Minister about descending into gutter politics. I said, I don't want a leader of my country descending into gutter politics. I want someone that I can respect and look up to. And they printed that word for word in the Australian, and I was gobsmacked. But I found out why afterwards. Murdoch didn't want Turnbull. The Liberals didn't want him because they couldn't own him. So they put my comments in there, anything they could do to get rid of that man, and I became part of that. So there's your press, there's your politics. They think they own this country.
In a way, they don't own it, but they have a fair chunk of control over it, don't they?
Oh, there's self-entitlement, like we don't know anything. Who do they come to when they need something doing,
See, I'd love your opinion on it. Where do you get your news from, like you personally?
I've got a friend who's hooked up on the internet, and this is interesting, like what's going on around the world is not being put on the news here. The big mass rallies and protests that are going, the arrests everywhere. We're not seeing that on the evening news.
No. We're only seeing it on the evening news if it has another agenda.
Yes.
So where do you personally get your news from?
From friends that source it.
Yeah. So if you were, say for example, you didn't have them friends that source it, where would you go to get your news from?
Well, if I wasn't interested, I reckon I'd just cut my connections if and just stay away from it.
Because what I'm trying to get at is like, you can never know what's true news these days and what's not.
There's an element of, there's always three sides or three truths. There's yours, theirs, and the actual
and
truth.
The truth, yeah. So the hardest thing is like, where do you find the actual truth? Because like you said, like even the
Can
advocate.
I give you an example?
Yep.
The serendipitous moments. Like, if I have a question about anything and I can't find someone to answer it, I just move on, and what happens, I'll have a chance encounter or a phone call. And the fellow that was driving me around in the election, the amount of times we were having a discussion about something and we needed to know something, and that phone rang, and we looked at each other and saw who it was, that just happened continuously. And the classic example, I met with Peter Rockcliffe and Tim Hess from Butchuna, and there was a lot of rumours going around that Jeremy Rockcliffe, the Minister of Primary Industries for the time, was related to Peter, and I thought, that can't be true. You can't give out a growth area to your cousin in the northwest, I thought. So I met with Peter, and I put to him that, asked you related to Jeremy, and he said he didn't know. And I knew straight away he wasn't telling me the truth, but I wasn't 100% sure, so I left that meeting. Driving home, I ring up an old buddy that used to take me fishing as a kid. He was one that took me out into the Myrtle rainforest on the Arthur River for the first time. I'll never forget that. Anyway, he's much older than me, and he was very interested in what was going on with my political goings-on because we both never saw that coming. And I told him about this conversation being related and anything. Well, he had a conversation with another lady that night telling about what. Next morning I get a phone call, and I answer it and go, he is related? I go, who's this? I won't mention the name. She said, he's related, and don't let anyone tell you any different. I babysitted them when they were kids. So the truth, if you're patient, will always come to you. Don't panic. If you've got questions, seek and you shall find. I read that somewhere once, and it's true. Yeah.
So kind of word of mouth is the best. But the hard thing is, like, how do you know that wasn't just a rumour?
How?
Yeah.
What, that they're related?
Yeah. That she babysitted them.
Well, I've got a fair bit of faith in this lady,
Yeah,
and I've since found out they are. So
yeah.
I think that's untoward. And you look at that. So Jeremy Rockcliffe, the minister at the time, allocated to his cousin, Tuna Seafoods, a grow out area in the northwest, which has now been on sold to Sea Lord Nasui. So without 1 cent changing hands, we've seen a reallocation of a wild fishery area over to a foreign-owned company with a terrible track record. Now that's the untoward nature of what I'm fighting against. And good luck in this state, because we are like one big village. You cannot suppress the truth in this state. There's too many connections. And we're pretty staunch, us Tassie boys. You know, a lot of my mates went to the mainland. They got work on the back of being from Tasmania, because traditionally over there, we'll give you your pound of sweat. We'll do what we're paid to do, and we'll do it without being told what to do. We don't have to wait around for someone to tell us to lift something up.
That's true. I went over there on a working holiday as a boilermaker, because I'm a boilermaker by trade. And as soon as they seen on a resume that I was from Tassie, they were like, "Do you want to come in for a trial?"
Yeah.
All right. So when everyone else was going in for an interview, I was going in for a trial and like getting paid to show them that I can actually work. And they said, "Yeah, we've had a few Tassie people through there, and they actually work."
Yeah, we're hands on, mate. You have to be a bit of everything here.
So going forward, what's an ideal Tasmania for you in the next 4 years? Like, what do you think needs to happen that's achievable?
What we need to do is recognise our points of difference, those things that set us apart from the rest of the world, and we need to highlight them, promote them, and then provide access in a sustainable way. You look at the Northwest Coast, the 8 Aboriginal tribes, the pathways to Robbins Island are all there. Tollymore Road from Table Cape to Bass Highway is the old Aboriginal pathway. You link up Wynyard to that. You can walk all the way. You've got the Sisters Beach walking track through to Rocky Cape there. You've got the boat harbour to Sisters Beach. You've got the beaches to Stanley. We need to create the pathways. We need to... I saw recently where Michael Mansell and TAC were objecting to places like Goldie Street having that name because of Goldie's history with the Aborigines. We cannot sanitise history, but what you can do, you can put a plaque up at the bottom of Goldie Street and tell everybody, warts and all, what that man did. You can create a whole engagement of Aboriginal communities and others just rebuilding those pathways and recognising those 8 tribes that are all gone now. They were remarkable. Ian McFarlane's book, Beyond Awakenings, the facts in there, evidence-based history, I'd encourage everyone to read that. It was a brutal, bloody, terrible thing that happened in this area here. And
is that about Cape Grim and that?
Oh, Cape Grim and all the rest of the abductions. We looked up the other night. We found 50 Aboriginal ladies that were abducted, and taken away. One poor lady, she got swapped with another fella, and he murdered her because she wasn't cleaning his mutton birds right. Brutal. Imagine being in a tribe and having your wife and your children stolen off you. And then what they did, they rounded up what was left and put them in with their traditional enemies up in the Cape Barren area there. People need to know those stories. We weren't taught this at school. We've got so much that has happened here. But
do you reckon it's because they're trying to sweep it all under the rug? Like,
like
the change of Australia Day and all that. Where do you sit on that?
Yeah, well, we need something that reflects who we are now and where we've come from.
So do you think changing the date will fix that, or you would be better off just changing the message?
What one of my friends is Scott. I've got a few Scottish mates, and I love their approach to everything. It's warts and all, and no bullshit. He said, have a rolling day. Have it on the last Monday in January every year. So it's not on a specific date, which will offend or exclude people. And I think that'd be the best way to go. But
do you think I'm a big believer that instead of changing the date, you just need to change the message. Like, this is what we used to be on this day, but this is how far we've come and this is what we are now.
Yeah, well, we need something that reflects all of us, and we are a nation divided, and you look at the way politics is, it's division. That's how they sustain their place at the table, is by dividing all of us, get us fighting amongst ourselves. So I hope that someone can come through and lead this country and show some genuine leadership.
So do you reckon the leader should be in a party?
No.
Or do you reckon they should de-affiliate once they get elected?
I don't like the party system where we get a leader. Look at the Liberal Nationals, 37% of the vote. Michael McCormick on 8% of the vote is our Deputy Prime Minister. That's not reflective of who Australia is or who they want. I'd like to, I don't know, maybe entertain the idea of everyone that's elected and then have a ballot to choose your leader. You know, it doesn't have to come from, but then that gets problematical, you know, like I really don't know. I don't know what the answer is, but I know that this system doesn't work.
So do you know anywhere in the world that has a good system that actually works?
A benevolent dictator would probably probably be my preferred option, but no, I don't know. My old boss used to always rattle on about the Sultan of Brunei, I think. When they were overlogging the elephant's habitat, he stopped it overnight. Wood chip boats in the port, chips piled up everywhere. You know, to have that sort of respect to be able to do overnight, which was going to adversely affect a lot of people, and be taken on the chin by all concerned. And also, you know, you've got to look after those people that will be displaced by doing that.
Well, as Australians, we kind of just deal with the shit that we dealt and we get through it. So you think someone needs to have the power to be able to make that call?
We need a leader beyond reproach, not bound by money, donors, parties, someone that can sit above. And I guess that's why a lot of Christians are getting up and about at the moment, because, you know, if you look at the whole world in a nutshell, the Muslims, they recognise Jesus as a prophet, not as the Son of God, but as a prophet, so he has respect there. The Jews overlooked the first one they knocked off, waiting for the second guy to come, so he's, you know, that's the Zionists, that's and the Christians in general. So you got three large entities or groups hanging their hat on one person to lead them through all of this that we're currently enduring. Whether that unfolds, but like most things, there's an element of truth in most things. And I'm not a Christian per se. I'm not a Muslim. I'm not a Zionist. But I have seen through my life experience that there is something else that is there that you can't touch, you can't see. It's been watching over me, and I had an interesting thing happen on the bank of the Arthur River. You know, when I broke my leg and they cut my power off, the only people that were visiting me at the time were the Jehovah's Witnesses. There's three little old ladies used to come down. I'd make them a cup of tea because they had all the time in the world and I couldn't go anywhere. And they left me this book. It was called Revelations, the Grand Climax. So I had a candle, and no other books. So I was sitting by this open fire of a night, and it was a bit like a science fiction tale for me, reading Revelations, John's account of what happened. He wrote that on the Isle of Patmos, I believe, when he was in exile. That was his vision. Anyway, so it was a pretty interesting read, and at the start of it, it says, "For he who has wisdom, let him understand," or whatever. You know, I always thought I was a smart bastard, and I was really intrigued with this book. And there was one thing I kept discounting, and that is the mention of angels. To me, at the time, I thought, pixies, gnomes, fairies, you know, just another manufactured, imaginary being or thing. Anyway, my mate Peter come in one day and he said, "I'm going down the Arthur River. If you don't come with me this time, that's it, we're through." He did a canoeing trip quite often. You know, spend 8, 9 days there. Anyway, I thought, oh shit, I better get a canoe. I borrowed a canoe, borrowed some camping gear, waterproof drum, and because I had nothing. And got my sister to drop me up at the Arthur. I paddled down this section there, and I felt like an Indian. I was going down through this beautiful rainforest with this pebbly bottom stream, and I felt the most alive that I had. I was in a pretty dark place at the time, you know. I had no money, I had a broken leg. Any standing that I had was just taken away.
Literally.
Literally. And I'm sitting on the bank of this river this morning. Pete was off getting his driftwood somewhere, and there was this white mist that sort of hangs above the rainforest, and it started to change shape. I thought, wow, look at that. And it changed into an I, an A, and an M. And I thought, that's really out there. It was a perfect I, a perfect A, and an M. And I thought, look at that. And then it merged together slowly, and then turned into this angel-like figure with wings. No head, just a torso and these outstretched feather arms up in the air. And I wasn't thinking much. I was just, I was gobsmacked at the time. And then it swirled around and disappeared. And I looked for Pete, and I don't know where he was, up the creek up there somewhere. And
did he believe you when you told him?
Well, here's the thing. That was in 2001. If you go to the Canunna Bridge on the Arthur River, there's a bench there, and I carved my name into it with a set of Leathermans that I had. I had 8 days in that river, and that was 2001, so February 2001. Yeah. And, when he come back, I told him the story, but just recently, with passing of time, you forget things, you start to doubt things, and I went back to Pete and talked to him and said, no, that's what you said, that's what you saw, rah, rah, rah. But here's an interesting thing. 10 years later, I get with my girlfriend, Beck. Now, I'm 15 years older than her, and I turned up to her parents' place on Christmas Day. They knew nothing about me. She's young, attractive, smart, beautiful lady. And someone like me walked in the door. She left her phone behind. I could see the look of concern on their face. They weren't, too worried, but I could see they were just, who are you? So I dropped the phone and took off really quick. And after Christmas, I thought I'll go back and introduce myself so they can ask me some questions and that. And that's what I did after all the family had gone. And Beck's mum is a Christian. And I'm sitting down. They asked me what I do, where I'm from, nutting it all out. And then they asked me if I went to church. And I said, no, I don't go to church. I did when I was a kid, because the Sunday school teacher owned the scuba centre, and you got to go out in the boat. So that was my motivation to go to church when I was young.
So you've always loved getting on the water?
Oh, yeah. My dad and all his brothers are involved in fishing. But anyway, she asked me did I go to church, and I said, no, the bush is my church, the ocean. When I have problems, I just go out there on my own and usually nut out what's going on. And then I mentioned the angel story. It come up in conversation, and I told her what I saw, and I told her the I am, and she said, do you know that's God's name? And I said, what do you mean it's God's name? And she proceeded to tell me that when Moses was up on the mountain and God was telling him to go free his people from the Egyptians, Moses said to God, and who shall I tell them has sent me? And God said, I am. And after she said that to me, I just sat there gobsmacked. I felt like the most ignorant piece of shit on the planet. I thought, because you think you're smart and you know things. I didn't know that. But the possible relevance of what just took place before me on that riverbank hit me 10 years later. I drove off in the car and I started crying. I don't know why. I just started crying, and I was driving through Forth. Next thing, the police siren comes on behind me. I'm going past the cemetery. Apparently, I was doing 85 or 90 in a 70k zone. But the police pulled me up, and he's walked up to the car. I got tears rolling down the side of my face. And he's looked at me and he's going, mate, don't panic. It's just traffic fine.
I'll just give you a caution.
I said, no, I'm not crying about that, bruv. But so, sometimes in life, you don't even realise, well, I didn't, the possible relevance,
So how old was you when that happened?
2001. So what's that? That's 20 years ago. So I was 36.
So do you reckon, though, that everyone needs something like that to happen to believe?
Seek and you shall find. And Peter, my mate that forced me to go down the river with him, always stipulated, God is within man. Those were the exact words. God is within. He's not in a church, in a building, or in a book. He's within you.
So do you think that that actually happened, or it happened in your mind and you needed to have that be like happen that day?
Who would ever know?
Yeah.
You know, what I did start thinking after the angel disappeared, I started, because I read where good or bad angels, it mentions in Revelation. I thought, what are you, good or bad?
You're like, fuck.
Yeah,
Am I going to drown?
Well, it said in that book that Satan's got his angels and that.
Yeah.
So,
Because I'm like, I don't believe in any religion in that, but I'm a massive believer that like you will see what you need to see. So like, I don't even believe in ghosts and that, but I think if you see a ghost, you've needed to see that ghost, or you wanted to see that ghost.
Yeah, well, I guess I had questions, and also I'd eliminated things as not being possible. And the funny thing I've learned in life, as soon as I make my mind up about some things and think I'm absolutely right,
You're proven wrong.
you turn around the corner and you find out either how far off you are or just how wrong it is. So, and that's the thing about time. This world is rush, rush, rush. Be still and know that I am God. People don't get the opportunity to find that stillness, that peace, and empty their mind of all the thoughts, and then the God moments happen. And interestingly enough, all my buddies that never were into fishing, they don't even realise it, but they're meditating. They go out now and they stare at the end of the rod because they're not real good fishermen. They hardly get a bite. So their whole time is staring at that rod, waiting for a bite until all their thoughts disappear, and then they have...
I'd never make a good fisherman. I was the one, my pop always used to go after me. I'd throw it in, wind it in, throw it out, wind it in, throw it out, wind it in. He goes, you can't catch nothing.
Yeah.
But I just don't have the patience for that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Some people do.
Yeah. I like it. The biggest thing for me as a kid fishing was the discovery aspect, walking up a stream, coming across a snake or a platypus or an eagle, or getting a big trout and putting it on the handlebars of the dragster and riding back to town and selling it in the top pub for $5. It's the nature-based experience. Nature is God. That's where you have your God moments. It's all around. You look for God, go look out in the bush, look in the ocean, and the synchronicity and the entwinement of everything, interreliance. That's about where I'm at.
Yep.
That's what happened to me. It didn't turn me into an evangelical Christian or anything, but
Did it change your direction on what you believed in? And
well, that point in time, I had nothing. I didn't even have a pair of shoes. I had no car. I had no money. I had debt. From that point on, things changed, but I worked towards that change.
so do you reckon that message helped you be like, nah, right, I'm gonna be all right. Let's fucking do this.
You might think this is weird, but since I was very little, I'd always felt that something or someone was watching over me. Always felt like that. Always knew that things would work out. I've been in some pretty dark places. I was before I saw that angel in the sky and everything.
So do you think that got you out?
Well, I came out of that river. I had 8 days there. I didn't eat for the last 3 days. I'd never been canoeing before. I got dunked probably 20 times. I think it was 100 odd kilometres I canoed. I got in at Blackwell's Road and came out at Turk's Landing down on the Arthur River. So I had 8 days there. I swore when my mate came and picked me up, and all he could say was, man, when I was telling him the stories. There's a lot happened on that river. That was one thing. I swore I was going back in 3 weeks. Here we are, 2021. Life took over, and I haven't been back yet, but I'm going back one day. I walked my children. Where that happened, I told Beck, my partner, about it, and we walked the kids in one day. It took quite a while. I had to carry Arthur all the way. He had sore legs. And we went to that bend on the river. I took her there. But I'd like to go down again.
Just yourself in a canoe again?
I'd like to take some people. You know, the beauty of that river is the camping spots are all there, so you can go off on your own, go as a group, but find your own place or space and just find your own way. Bit like life, actually. Yeah, and funny thing happened was I was drifting down behind Moore Banner there. I was lying back in this Canadian canoe, and my hand on my head like that to shield the sun, lying back like this. And I saw this eagle fly over. And then as I was going down, I could see something coming down, and it was this little feather. It came all the way down. I didn't move my hand, and it landed in the palm of my hand.
Yeah,
you know, just weird stuff, you know. Then I come across a prospector that was way off the river. I scared the living daylights out of him because, you know, he wasn't expecting to see anyone there. And I come up behind him and I said, "Hey, how you going?" "Oh, fuck," you know. And then turned out I knew a friend of his, Wally Barr. He was an old prospector. He's now dead. And when I mentioned Wally's name, his eyes lit up and he said, "Oh, he's a great mate of mine." And he knew I wasn't a threat. I was just a, you know, bit of a hippie going on a bit of an adventure. And he showed me the bottles of gold that he had. Like he had 3 pill bottles, about the thickness of my little finger. I estimate a level teaspoon is an ounce of gold, I think, of shavings. I reckon he had 2.5 ounces in each of those.
Yeah, right.
He died not long after. But yeah, there was all sorts that happened down there. You know, that river is...
So how did you come out the other end after them 8 days? Because you went in pretty dark and depressed, yeah?
Yeah, I was happy, but, you know, in deep down, there was an emptiness. There was an emptiness. I didn't have a partner that I cared about as me as much, you know, like that reciprocal thing that everybody sort of hopes for. I couldn't see anything on the horizon. I had no money. Any standing I had was gone. Everything I'd learned was more or less for naught. You know, I was just, what's it all about?
So was that the whole time, was that going through your mind when you was canoeing, or
No.
in and out, or that
No.
wasn't there at
No,
all?
you forget about that once you get in the bush. It's overtaken by other things going on.
So after that 8 days, did you have a new lease on life?
Well, it's funny, like, not eating for 3 days, the only thing I was craving was a cup of tea.
So was that by choice, or did you just run out of food?
No,
or?
I lost all my food. I lost my fly rod, my guitar I broke. I was coming down near the Totu Bridge and I was looking at this car that was parked up on the bridge and not watching what I was doing. I hit a log, upended the canoe, had all my stuff going round in circles in this big back eddy trying to...
That sounds like a story, like a trip where you're just like, why the fuck does this shit keep happening?
Yeah, no, I had a devil. This is the thing about once you immerse yourself into the bush and you're not smelling like anything. I had a devil jump in the river, swim across the bank, get out and sit next to me, right there, like that, shook himself off. You're not a threat. You're just a part of it all, you know. You know, you think about the thylacine, all those people that spent the time in the bush that used to go away for 3 months, and they went after the First and Second World War, and the advent of the petrol engine and what have you. So the actual players that stayed, they were gone. They died in the war, and all their knowledge was gone with them. But the fellas that did spend the time, like Wally Barr, he had umpteen dozen thylacine stories. He used to disappear at Waratah with a bag of salt and a bag of flour, come back 3 months later with a bag of gold, drop it on the bar, get some grog, and have a good time for a while, and then away he'd go again. And he had quite a few accounts of the thylacines. So
do you reckon they're still there, or what?
Oh, I know they are.
Have you seen one?
Yeah, I had a fetus in my hand in '96. Yeah. That's a story in itself. A fella borrowed my boat one morning and sunk it, and was pretty sad about it all. I sold the shop, moved along. He come out to see me and was walking along the road through the bush, and I found this fetus on the side of the road. I didn't know it was the thylacine fetus. I just thought, what the hell's that? You know, I've been shooting my whole life. I've seen kangaroo feeders, possum feeders, the whole box and dice. This was something completely different. And anyway, we put it down between 2 big trees. We didn't have a bag to put it in. And the intention was to pick it up on the way back. Come back, it was gone. Didn't think anything more about it. Like I said, I didn't realise what it was. Next week, I hitched to Hobart, to get my groceries, because I used to hitch down every fortnight, pick up my vegetables off the Mong grocers at Salamanca, fill my backpack up, hitch up. Anyway, I go to pick the mercury up on the Friday, and in the front page was a thylacine fetus in a solution bottle. And I was just gobsmacked. I thought I had one of them in my hand the other day. So I went straight round to the museum. Catherine Medlock was the name. She was the curator there. And I said, I had one of them in my hand the other day. And I told her where it was and that. And she was, you know, you could see there was a bit of, not disbelief, but she sort of held her head back when I was telling her. Yeah, so I had that. And then on that trip on the Arthur, on my last night, I heard this yip, 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 yip going on, like the most resonant yip. I'd never heard anything like it. So I get to Turk's Landing the next day, and I found the hamper for the tourists. They kept tuna in there and tea bags, and all I was hanging was a cup of tea, believe it or not. And I opened this hamper up, and there's the tea bags and sugar and long life milk, and I thought, awesome. So I lit a big fire, got me a cup of tea going, ripped into a can of tuna, and next thing the tourist boat pulled in, the George Robinson. All these tourists were getting off. I was in old grey, what do you call those, old grey flannels. I had full set of dreads, beard down to my chest, and I looked pretty wild, and they'd look at me as they were getting off, and as soon as I made eye contact, they'd look away and dart off. And then the tour guide, Grantley Cole, he knew me. He said, "Oh, Garbo, what are you doing here?" And I told him my story, and he went in to do his bit with the tourists. And then the launch operator, I started talking to him, an older fellow. I think it was Tucky or Turk or something like that. And I remember this. There was more than one the night before. It was like a group hunting. Yeah, they get real feverish over one area, and then it sounded like it was coming from somewhere else. And I never heard anything like it. And I mentioned it to him. He said, "Oh, that's a thylacine boy." And I said, "How do you know that?" And he said, "I saw a mother with 3 young'uns there 4 years prior, just up from where I was." Now get this. Where I was, in 1985, a fella called Hans Norling, I think his name was in a 4-wheel drive at a crossroads. And he opened his curtain up in the 4-wheel drive and saw this thylacine in the moonlight standing next to the car. It was one of the most credible sightings. That credible, in fact, they never released where he was. Well, they did a couple of years ago, where he made his sightings, and where I was on the river, as the crow flies, is just probably 2-3 kilometres. So then when I was running for the election for the Senate, I get a phone call from a contract shooter, and he asked me to come out and see him because he had a cat control policy he wanted to put forward, because like him and me, the cats we've seen, out in the bush out there and all around town, they needed controlling, and he had a good plan to do it. And then I started talking to him, and he mentioned where he goes with his mate and listens to him. And Carl, who picked me up after the Arthur River trip, when I mentioned this noise, he's dead now, but he used to grow dakka, and he used to spend 3 months of the year out bush doing it and stay there. And he said, man, he said, all them time I thought they were terriers across from where I was camped. And he said, I always thought it was strange because I never heard a vehicle coming or going, and they were going of a night after dark. So, and then get this, then we go to see Peter, my mate, at his house. He'd come out before me and was back at his place. And we went in there, and he'd just come back from St Vincent de Paul with this book that he got, and it was about thylacines. Part of it was about thylacines and this coughing like yip bark. It mentioned 3 distinct barks that they have. And I thought, that's uncanny that he's turned up that day as I've come out the river. Then I go to the Rocky Cape Roadhouse to pay me my bill because I'd been away for a few days, and there was a truck driver there, and I was telling Anne, and I said, I went down the Arthur River, saw an angel, heard a thylacine, and had a bit of a chuckle about the fact I was saying that. And the truck driver standing there turned to me and said, what did it sound like, boy? And I described it to him, and he said, that's a thylacine. He used to go out to the stockyards at Preolina with his dad, and they used to have him in the stockyards and grab him by the tail and listen to him of a night out there. So I sort of had 3 confirmations within 2 hours of coming off the river Well, 4 actually, if you take
And so when was this?
2001.
So do you reckon they're still out there right now?
Oh, for sure. Through my fishing experience, I know if I don't set my nets on a certain tide at a certain time of the year in a certain spot, I won't catch a certain fish. And all these other spots I fish with fish that are just endemic to that spot, nowhere else, at a certain time. And the fact that the male thylacine has a pouch, that tells you heaps about that animal. They're like all the other creatures in this place that move accordingly to the seasons and the food.
So how come you think that in this day where everyone's got a camera on them, how come they haven't been spotted?
From the 30s onwards, the advent of the petrochemical engine, we make noise, we stink, we got toothpaste, soap, everything known to man on us, the fabric softeners, the detergents, the textiles, but generally our noise and the fact that no one stays out there long enough to become part of it. Once you become part of it, it becomes part of you. And
so you think they know that someone's there, so they stay away?
Yeah, my grandfather told me that. They used to follow him on the 10-foot track. You'd turn around, they'd stop, dart behind a bush. You walk along, you look around while you're walking, and they're plodding along. They're a very curious animal. I read where they said that they don't have a very strong sense of smell. Well, how would you determine whether an animal like that's extinct from 1930 onwards had a distinct sense of smell or not? There's a lot of innuendo and myth associated, but someone will come into contact if they haven't already and not telling people about it. My biggest concern, what do? If you went and told someone, can you imagine like the value associated with an extinct animal and what that would do, who that would draw out to try and go and catch it or prove its existence? I did mention to Catherine Medlock, what's the most important, that's the curator at the museum, what's the most important thing you need as a scientist or in that field from this animal? And they said a blood sample.
So people will go out looking for blood.
Well, money. Money creates all sorts of misery for all sorts of things and all sorts of creatures, and something like that. I just hope there's enough space for them there. There's enough country, that whole west coast. I've done the southwest track. I saw a den down there. I found a scat when I was down there. That was in 1997, I think it was. So that whole west coast, they've got a big range there. And like I said, from the 30s onwards, the 2 world wars took care of a lot of people that had that history, that knowledge associated with the bush, and they were gone forever. And then we had the petrochemical engine, and the rest is history, so to speak.
So you honestly think that would they be out there in numbers, or there'd just be less of them, and that's why they're harder to spot?
I've got no idea. Where I heard, where my mate goes and listens to them, is quite a big gap as far as territory goes. But the fact that the male has a pouch, like I said, tells you heaps about them. They're constantly on the move, and if you're constantly on the move, you're very hard to pinpoint, aren't you?
It sounds like that they move overnight too.
Yeah, they were certainly this night. It was just after dark. And I sat down and away they went. It was haunting, actually. I'd never heard anything like it in my life. I thought, what the hell was that?
Yeah, you'd be pretty fucking scared, wouldn't you? Because
I wasn't scared. I was just mesmerised, like the pitch and the resonance associated.
So if you were to say something very similar to it, what would it be, like pitch wise and sound wise?
Oh, well, like a terrier. Yip 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 yip. But
like really really yappy.
Yeah, like when I was listening to it, yip 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 yip, and then you'd hear coming yip 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 yip, and then it was like those.
So do you reckon they were communicating to each other?
Oh, they were hunting. I've been out with packs of hunting dogs, beagles, and all the rest. One will get on the scent, and then the whole crew come in. So yeah, I reckon they were working.
Fuck, maybe they were hunting you.
Jesus Christ! Well, I hadn't eaten for 4 days. I don't think
they probably thought, fuck, he's not going to put up much of a fight.
No.
So when you got on that canoe tour and you haven't eaten for 3 or 4 days, when you ran out of food, did you what was your plan? Like, was there somewhere close or?
We talked about serendipitous moments.
Yeah.
I was sitting at the Canana Bridge and thought, Jesus, I'm hungry. And a fella that I'd never met before, his name's Tom Coates, came down on a dirty old 500, and he just called into the Edith Creek shop and bought 2 ham salad rolls. And he said to me, I asked him actually, I said, oh, mate, I haven't eaten for a few days. You got anything to eat? And he said, well, actually I have. I bought an extra one. I don't know why I bought 2, but I did. And he gave me the ham salad. And then while we were sitting there, Helena and Nordo come across the bridge in the Salika. And Helena's going, what are you doing here? And I said, oh, good question. And I said, you haven't got any chocolate, have you? And she said, I have actually. And I said, it's not a peppermint crisp. And she said, it is. And,
What the
you know,
so is this where you get the sense that someone's looking after you?
Oh, yeah. And, yeah.
So just shit like that constantly happens.
In my time of need, you know, if you need it comes, and you know, that's it. You just have to, and I'd say this to any young person that's got any dramas or anything that's troubling them. You be patient. You stick to your guns, and I can guarantee you things will turn around.
I think that's the main problem is patience. Like, no one these days has patience. They don't want to wait. They want it right now.
We live in an instant world. We want instant wealth. We want instant health. We want instant gratification. You know, we want everything to come in a tablet and be able to get it in the mail tomorrow. But anything of substance takes time. And time, there's another quote that Pete throws at me. Time is here to help us, not enslave us. So, yeah,
they're pretty wise words, to be honest.
they're not Peter's.
He just heard it somewhere, read it in a book.
Yeah, no, he's an absolute legend, that bloke.
Yeah, cool.
No, he's a.
All right, so here's a question for you. If you had one regret in your life, what would it be? The biggest one, the first one that comes to your mind.
Yeah, I when I was quite young, I was walking past the Wynyard football oval, and there was a few boys in these tractor tyres that were mounted, the big tractor tyres mounted up. They were playing war games or something, and I picked a rock up. I thought one of them threw a rock over, and I just picked up a pebble, threw it back over, walked off, and I took a young kid's sight.
Fuck.
Yeah, I blinded him in one eye. I think I was 9 or 10. I'm not too sure.
What the pebble just hit him straight in the eye?
Yeah, it took his eye out.
So how did you know that happened? Was that like a later on thing, or did someone see you, or how did that work?
Oh, I live in a small town, mate. I saw him holding his head when I walked through the oval, and his mates walking with him, and then I found out the next day what had happened.
Yeah, fuck.
Yeah, that's not a good. That's one thing if I could give him his sight back, I would.
You would.
That's
It's hard, isn't it? Like just something as simple as that.
Yeah, and get this, years later, a lady turned up out of the blue. This is in, I think it was just before 2001. Might have been just after. It was just after, actually. And she's turned up and said that I had a son. And she was up in Queensland way somewhere. Anyway, it turns out she was good friends with the fella concerned, so I got the opportunity much later to say sorry. I knew that, you know, I didn't expect forgiveness or anything. There's nothing I could do really that could change things for him, and I didn't want anything of him. I didn't want his, I just wanted him to know that.
You were sorry.
Yeah, you never forget the stuff.
Simple.
Like that. Yeah.
So how did that go down? Did he accept your apology, or he just
he nodded, but there's still that
hatred?
I wouldn't say it was hatred. By that time, we were both much maturer and older. That was something that I wished had never happened. I didn't throw a rock intending to take his eye out.
You're not that good of a shot.
I am actually.
Oh, fuck. Probably don't want to say that.
Yeah, well,
Yeah, right.
Yeah, so that. Yeah, but no, I don't. Even the bad things that happened to me in life were good things in disguise, you know. Things that you thought the world was ending, well, 4 years down the track, you realise that that had to happen or you wouldn't be in the position or place where you are now. So good luck, bad luck. Bad luck is good luck in disguise. It's I think it's the universe sometimes pointing you in the direction where you need to be and doing what you need to be doing. And I guess that's where I am now. You know, you get to a point in life where I've experienced and done everything I've wanted. I don't want for anything more. You know, I've got everything that I need in life, and then you start to think about your friends around you that are not that fortunate and not in that position. And then once they're sorted, then you look, you know, there's always someone that needs a hand up, a leg up.
So you're at a stage in your life where you'd want to better everyone else's life to be where you're at now.
The things that I hold dear, a lot of other people hold dear. So, you know, it's about a collaborative, communal approach to everything, you know. Community. At my first forum, my old football coach, John Frog Newman, absolute legend, he come up to me after the forum and he said, "Write this down, Curter. It's all about raw honesty and sense of community." That was his advice to me in that first election. You keep it simple, raw honesty, and your sense of community, and everything else will take care of itself. So, you know, and if people don't want me represent them, that's fine. You know, but for me personally, I've got to do everything I can to make sure the things that need addressing are addressed. And if people don't want to support me, then I'll quite happily go back and have me when the whales came life with my kids in a rowboat.
So the best advice that you could give, say, the younger generation now, like off your life experience, what would it be?
Look after your health. Do not drown your problems in alcohol. Moving the body to another place will not lighten the darkness of the soul. Everything that you need can be done right here. Be patient, eat well, stay active, and there's a lot of endorphins that are released when you help other people and give them a leg up, or you know, and it can be as simple as just sharing a roll or buying someone a coffee or throwing some poor bastard a smoke in the street that needed it, you know. Just be a decent person, you know, and do unto others, you know. Like it's that's a classic, you know. And be patient.
But I think be patient's a good one.
Yep. And if you need help, don't be scared to ask. You know, we're all sort of on the journey. You know, we all need a hand at times, and the best times are had when they're shared. So you know, share what you have, give a hand when you can, and fight the good fight, like I've been told.
So what would be your best piece of advice that you've ever gotten in your life, do you think? Like that's the piece of advice that shaped you the most, I suppose.
Oh, I guess.
It's a tricky one.
Well, it is. My headmaster, Gerald Cross, my first day at high school, I walked through the gate, and a fella called Ian Page, he was in grade 9, said, "I'm going to put your head down the toilet, Garland." I said, "No, you're bloody not." And we had a bit of a punch-up. Before the siren went for the first day in high school, I was sitting in the principal's office with a bloodied nose and a torn shirt. And Gerald Cross walked around me a couple of times. I think he poured himself a watered-down whiskey, if I remember rightly. And then he walked around me once, sat down at the desk, and then he looked over at me and he said, "I can see you and me are going to be good friends, Mr. Garland." And he stood behind me in advanced maths, and he sort of instilled the confidence in. He said to me, "I could be anything I want to be," and I believed him. So, you know, belief. Don't listen to the naysayers, the doubters. You know who you are. You know what it is. that ticks your box and you know what it is that you'd like to do. The first step is getting up and working towards that.
I think a lot of people are scared as well, especially nowadays, because everyone can look at you on Facebook, Instagram, and all that. But a lot of people don't know that people don't give a fuck about you. Like, they've got more important shit to do. So if you want to do it, then just go and do it.
Do it. Don't die wondering. You only live your life once. Don't live out somebody else's life. You know, we all have skills, passions, talents, and things that and desires that, you know, take us whichever way. Be true to yourself. Don't let anyone try and steer you off your pathway if that's who you are and that's what you want to do. You know,
So it's like live in the now.
Yeah, be here, be now. You know, don't worry about the past. You can't change anything there, and don't think too much about the future. The future will take care of itself. The most important thing is right here, right now. What can you do today? And if you have no resources and no money, you can get up of a morning and you can work on your health. You can go for a walk. The healthier you get, the more healthy your mind, and that's very important. You know, alcohol. I used to love my grub. I love my mates and love parties and getting pissed and whatever, and playing footy. Everything revolved around alcohol, but I'm so grateful that I gave it away when I did. It sucks your soul, and you play catch-up football forever. You put the nutrients in, do the hard work, and then bang over alcohol, and you're back to square one again. You know, and believe in yourself. If nobody else does, you believe in yourself and trust in your own. And God is within. You don't need to join a church or anything. If you've got any questions, what used to sort me out a lot, I'd particularly when I had my dark times at Rocky Cape, I'd get up and I'd walk through to Sisters. Well, halfway through to Sisters Beach, through the Rocky Cape National Park, all those troubles that I went into the park with were left behind somewhere and were meaningless, and I came out the other end like I'd been cleansed.
Did they come back, though, when you got back?
What's that?
Did they come back when you got back? Like when you got back home, or somewhat?
Most problems in life, once you've nutted it out in your head what to do, that's it.
Most of them are in your mind, aren't they? Like,
they are, yeah.
every problem has a solution that you personally can work out.
Yeah. Well, I was very paranoid about going to nightclubs, walking in the door of the beach hotel, and everyone turns and looks at you like that. I was very uncomfortable doing that, but I continually pushed myself. People probably don't know this, but that's a fact. I guess I'm a shy person by nature. My character probably doesn't portray that, but
so do you think by nature you're shy, but you've realised you can't be shy for what you want to succeed in doing?
When you're passionate about things, shyness and misgivings, they're forgotten.
Like back previously watching like your first Facebook videos and that, you could kind of tell you was a bit shy, but I know it's like the anger was pushing you through it.
Yeah, and it's funny because some of the best talks I've given, I felt like I was angry as buggery, and it must have come across as angry. But then I listened to them, and it's not. It's measured. But inside, I'm bubbling, mate. She's boiling over inside me, to get out what I've got. But so looks can be deceiving, and appearances can be deceptive. Do not judge. That's one thing. My dad pointed out to me when I was very young. My old man was a bit of a rumman. He couldn't read and write, but he could add up, and he certainly performed a few stings over his lifetime. But he said to me, "You listen to everybody. Everybody's got their story, and do not judge a book by its cover." Yeah, that's a very important thing, because we all do it. We all look at someone and we've got them summed up.
I think it's a part of like humanity, really. Like,
yeah.
But yeah, you do need to fight it, especially nowadays.
Yeah. Everybody's fighting
their own shit.
Yeah, their personal battle, and if you remember that, that'll make things a bit easier for you.
All right, cool. So, winding things up, if someone wanted to help you along in your cause and that, you're obviously on Facebook, Craig Garland. concerned citizen, is it now?
Oh, I'm not too sure. Mate.
So do you have control of that page, or someone's helping you along with that?
Yeah, no, I go onto it when I can. I've got a lady that she's got access to it, but she hasn't been doing anything there.
Yeah.
You know, I've had to come up to speed with technology pretty quick.
So if they wanted to help you along in your fight, what would be the best way to?
I'll just come along to the rallies. We'll have some forums and what have you. Yeah, and don't vote for the major parties. You know, I think the Northwest electorate of Braddon has an amazing opportunity to send a loud message to the nation, and that is put those major parties last. They need to be told loud and clear, because democracy's been hijacked and we're in a bad place, and we need to take it back. And it's never going to happen while you keep voting Labor and Liberal.
So, for example, I know a lot of young people. I used to do it myself. I used to just donkey vote.
Yep.
And I used to think, like, the older generation used to go off at me, and I said, look, I wouldn't know who I'm voting for, so it's safer for me to donkey vote.
Yep.
So how would I best be informed without going into that? Say I have no concern with politics. What would be the easiest way to find out who to vote for? Should I just stick with the independents to give their little guys a go, or?
Well, if it's a good independent, you do a bit of research. If
So are you allowed to, say for example this election, are you allowed to do a video of who you would vote for and why?
I could, but I did, with the preferences. You explain how the voting system works, and preferences are really important. But this time round, I'm not telling anybody where to put their preferences. My only message is put both the major parties last and vote for someone that cares. That's it. Simple. Someone that cares.
And if you can't find anyone that cares, then maybe you need to step up and care yourself.
That's right. And don't be put off by it all.
Was you put off to start off with?
Yeah, I was. You have to fill out paperwork. You have to get hundreds.
Is it as scary as what everyone thinks?
Not if you're passionate. If you've got the passion and a bit of support, you will need a bit of support. It takes, as I found out, if you've got a team, it makes things so much easier.
So is that what the local party's about?
Yeah,
So can anyone jump on board with that?
My word, and my hope, my sincere hope is that we get some brighter, more leading lights than me, put their hand up, and some younger people too. Like we don't have the diversity in Parliament, so yeah, I'd steer away from the major parties. When I'm talking major, I'm talking Labor and Liberal. I'm not talking Greens. So steer away from them and vote for someone and hopefully someone will put their hand up in your community that you do know and trust and put your weight behind them. That'd be my advice.
All right, perfect. Anything else you'd like to say, or anything you think we've missed?
No, mate, I think I'm done.
Pretty much summed up. You got to go and play some chess now?
Yeah.
No. All right, cool. Thanks for coming on, buddy.
No worries. Thanks, Toby.
Thanks, mate. Bye.